Under the Rising Sun, Japanese Occupation and its Scars. The dawn of the 20th century saw Korea's autonomy crumble under the rising power of Japan. In 1910, Japan formally annexed Korea, beginning a brutal 35-year period of colonial rule. The Japanese sought to erase Korean culture and identity, replacing it with their own. Korean language and history were suppressed in schools, replaced with Japanese equivalents. The Japanese exploited Korea's resources and people for their imperial ambitions. Koreans were forced into labor, often in harsh conditions, to support Japan's war machine. This period left deep scars on Korean society, fostering resentment and a burning desire for independence. The impact of this occupation would continue to cast a long shadow over the Korean peninsula, even after Japan's defeat in World War II. A house divided. The post-war partition of Korea. The end of World War II in 1945 brought about the downfall of Japan's empire, marking a significant turning point in global history. However, for Korea, this momentous event marked the beginning of a new and complex struggle for identity and sovereignty. Instead of gaining their longed-for independence, Korea found itself divided along the 38th parallel, a line that would come to symbolize the deep ideological rift of the Cold War era. This arbitrary line, hastily drawn by the victorious Allied powers, separated the Korean peninsula into two distinct zones of occupation, each governed by different ideologies and political systems. The Soviet Union administered the north, establishing a communist regime that would align with its own political and economic philosophies. Meanwhile, the United States took control of the south, promoting a capitalist democracy that mirrored its own values and interests. This division, initially intended as a temporary measure to oversee the disarming of Japanese forces, quickly solidified into a more permanent separation, as both superpowers entrenched their influence in their respective zones. The burgeoning Cold War rivalry between the United States and the Soviet Union turned the Korean peninsula into a geopolitical battleground, with each side vying for dominance in this strategically important region. Each superpower sought to install a government aligned with its own ideology, further deepening the divide between North and South. The North, under Soviet influence, established the Democratic People's Republic of Korea in 1948, led by Kim Il-sung. In the South, the Republic of Korea was proclaimed with Syngman Rhee as its first president, backed by the United States. This ideological split set the stage for decades of tension and conflict. The division eventually led to the outbreak of the Korean War in 1950, a brutal conflict that caused immense suffering and devastation. Despite an armistice in 1953, the peninsula remains divided to this day, a stark reminder of the enduring legacy of the Cold War. Today, the Demilitarized Zone, or DMZ, stands as one of the most heavily fortified borders in the world, symbolizing the ongoing tension and the hope for eventual reunification. The story of Korea's partition is a poignant chapter in the broader narrative of 20th century geopolitics, reflecting the profound impact of global power struggles on individual nations and their people. Section 4. Brother Against Brother, the Korean War and its Aftermath. The fragile peace on the Korean peninsula shattered in 1950 when North Korean forces, backed by the Soviet Union and China, launched a surprise invasion of the South. This sudden and aggressive move caught the world off guard, leading to a rapid escalation of hostilities. The North Korean troops crossed the 38th parallel, the pre-war boundary between North and South Korea, with the aim of reunifying the peninsula under communist rule. This act ignited the Korean War, a brutal conflict that pitted brother against brother and drew in the United States and its allies on behalf of South Korea. The United Nations, led by the United States, quickly intervened, sending troops and resources to support the South Korean defense. The war saw fierce battles, with both sides experiencing significant losses. American soldiers, along with troops from other UN member nations, arrived in Korea to bolster the South Korean forces who were struggling to repel the invasion. The war raged for 3 years, leaving millions dead and the peninsula in ruins. Cities were destroyed, and countless civilians were displaced, creating a massive refugee crisis. The human cost of the war was staggering, with mass graves and countless casualties marking the landscape. The conflict not only devastated the Korean people, but also left deep scars that would affect generations to come. The war ended in 1953 with an armistice agreement, but no peace treaty was ever signed. The armistice brought an uneasy ceasefire, halting the active combat, but not officially ending the war. The agreement was signed at Panmunjom, a village located in the demilitarized zone, and it established the DMZ as a buffer between the two Koreas. Soldiers on both sides celebrated the end of hostilities, but the lack of a formal peace treaty meant that the conflict remained unresolved. The two Koreas remained technically at war, separated by a heavily fortified demilitarized zone, or DMZ. This narrow strip of land running roughly along the 38th parallel became one of the most militarized borders in the world. The DMZ is lined with barbed wire, landmines and military fortifications, and it is constantly patrolled by soldiers from both sides. Despite the armistice, occasional skirmishes and tensions have persisted along this border. The DMZ, a 2.5-mile wide buffer zone stretching across the peninsula, became a stark symbol of the division and a constant reminder of the unresolved conflict. It serves as a physical and ideological barrier between the communist north and the democratic south. Over the years, the DMZ has also become a unique ecological haven, with wildlife thriving in the absence of human habitation. However, the presence of boundary markers and border guards underscores the ongoing tension and the fragile peace that continues to define the Korean peninsula. Section 5, Behind the Bamboo Curtain, the rise of North Korea's Juche ideology. In the aftermath of the Korean War, North Korea, under the leadership of Kim Il-sung, embarked on a path of isolation and self-reliance. Kim, a charismatic but ruthless leader, consolidated his power and established a totalitarian state. Central to this new North Korea was the ideology of Juche, which emphasized national self-reliance and independence from foreign influence. Juche, often translated as self-reliance, became the guiding principle for all aspects of North Korean life, from politics and economics to culture and education. It served to justify the regime's authoritarian rule and its focus on military strength. Under Juche, North Korea transformed into a highly militarized society, prioritizing its military capabilities over the well-being of its people. Section 6. A Bridge Too Far. The elusive dream of reunification. Despite the deep divisions and decades of separation, the desire for reunification has remained a powerful sentiment among many Koreans. However, the path towards reunification has been fraught with challenges. The two Koreas have undergone vastly different political, economic and social transformations, making the prospect of integration a daunting task. Over the years, there have been sporadic attempts at dialogue and reconciliation between the two Koreas. Family reunions, allowing families separated by the war to briefly reunite, have offered glimpses of hope. However, these attempts have often been short-lived, hampered by mistrust, ideological differences and geopolitical complexities.